Project Blue Construction has run into more trouble with local leaders. Pima County has cited Beal Infrastructure and its subcontractor for not keeping dust under control. 13 News reporter Kayla Butter joins us live from that construction site near the Pima County Fairgrounds. And Kayla, has construction been slowed down at all?
Yeah, it definitely has been. You can't really see right now any dust, but that's because construction has been temporarily put on pause due to that citation. Now, that citation comes after the Pima County Department of Environmental Quality found that construction was causing large amounts of dust to be generated and crossing these property boundary lines.
This is your county government stepping up and doing the proper enforcement that should happen for any project.
On Monday, Pima County's Department of Environmental Quality sent a notice of violation to Project Blue's contractor for not having dust mitigation practices like water in place during construction.
We had known that they didn't have water and that they did have an activity permit with us, so we were doing daily inspections.
The issue surfaced after Tucson Water discovered Beal Infrastructure's subcontractor, Ames Construction, was using its water for dust mitigation, which the city said was not allowed. Natalie Shep, a manager with Pima County's DEQ, says regardless of its cause, dust is a criteria air pollutant and must be controlled during construction.
If we don't regulate it and we have a lot of dust in the air, then it can cause health problems, especially for children and older people and people with pre-existing breathing conditions.
Beal Infrastructure officials said they have since temporarily paused construction until they formalize a non-potable water source. In a statement to 13 News, Beal Infrastructure said in part, quote, Beal Infrastructure's contractors have fully cooperated with the numerous Pima County DEQ inspections at our Houghton Road site and are ensuring that dust control measures comply with all applicable requirements. We will respond to Pima County DEQ in accordance with their letter. District 2 Supervisor Matt Hines was one of the votes to approve the Project Blue land sale, but says recent construction issues haven't made him rethink his decision.
That doesn't change my support for the initial project. I think this is a very temporary hiccup, basically, and this is going to be resolved here in another week or so.
Hines says it's normal for Tucson water to be used during construction, even outside of city limits, for things like dust mitigation.
I do think that there is a spotlight, an additional spotlight on this particular project, and that did basically, it seems to have provoked a change in policy on the city of Tucson side of things in terms of how they go about granting those temporary construction permits.
Now, the contractor must respond to that notice by May 17th, and they must ensure that they do have water on site for dust mitigation before they're able to resume construction. Now, Shep also says that once construction does resume, the Pima County Department of Environmental Quality will continue to come here and check the site to ensure that they remain in compliance. Reporting live near the Pima County Fairgrounds, Kayla Butter, 13 News.